I'm Andrew Wallace. Welcome to the We've Got a Problem podcast, where each week we explore inspiring stories of struggle, success, and solutions to prevalent problems and how our guests have turned problems into opportunities. This week I'm joined by Kevin Palmieri, who, after overcoming depression and suicidal ideation, Kevin became passionate about self-improvement and entrepreneurship. Through his podcasting and speaking, he made it his life's purpose to make a positive impact on as many people as possible. He took his podcast from zero to a multi-six-figure business with over 900 episodes, sharing the lessons learned along the way, as well as some tips and strategies to get to the next level in love, life, health, and wealth. So, Kevin, thank you so much for joining me.
Andrew, I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate the intro, the bio. I'm excited to see where you and I venture to today.
Absolutely. So part of the podcast that I'm fascinated with is how the decisions that we make improve our lives, right? What drives change? How do we transform? How do we stick to change? How can we be better people? How can we lead richer lives to our full potential? And that's a line drive for you, because you guys have been working on this stuff for several years now with the Next Level University podcast, Next Level Universe in general. Can you talk to me about how you kind of came to start Next Level University?
Yeah, it's very interesting. From all outside standards, I had what anybody could dream of. I was in my mid-20s. I had a job where I traveled. I made good money. I had the body of my dreams. I had a beautiful girlfriend. I had a sports car. All the things that you see in the movies, you're like, I would really like to have that. I had most of those things, but I was very miserable. Yeah. I was very, very, very miserable. And the reason I always try to start from the beginning is because I think people see where we are today and they assume, oh, they just ended up there. And there's a story behind everybody's progress, behind everybody's rock bottom, whatever it may be. So I had this wake up call when my girlfriend at the time, we lived together. She said to me, Kev, I want to move across the country and I want to chase my dreams. And I am very positive thinking, very believe in you, very positive belief now. But back then I said, you shouldn't do that. And here's a list of 50 reasons why. It didn't make any sense to me. I didn't have a growth mindset. I didn't understand how you could possibly succeed. And she ended up leaving me, which was the best thing in the world. She did exactly what she should have done. And I'm very proud of her for that. We're on good terms and we've spoken since. But when she left me, Andrew, I had to look in the mirror for the first time in my life, and the proverbial mirror of who am I as a man? And I didn't like what I saw. I was insecure. I was not confident. I was afraid of my own shadow. I didn't feel like I had a bright future. And I realized that I put much of my internal livelihood, my internal health on external results. Yeah. And that's when I first got into self-improvement. I'm living all alone. My bills just doubled. I don't know how I'm going to pay the rent because work was slow. I hit rock bottom, and I remember thinking, okay, I have to do something different if I want different results. And I started saying positive affirmations every night before I went to bed. I am handsome, I'm talented, I'm worthy. And Andrew, this year I'm going to make the most money I've ever made in my entire life. You can see I didn't really get the lesson there. Right.
Yeah. You were doing the thing from The Help, right? You're kind, you're pretty, you're important. You're like, well, that'll get you that. Yeah. Hey, you know what? It might start to change your mindset, but there's some steps in between that you might need to take.
Yeah, it definitely started. But what happened was so my girlfriend left me in October of that year. The next year, I ended up getting a promotion at my job, and I was a foreman of this construction company. Okay. And being the foreman means you open up the job and you close the job. So you're on every job from start to finish, which I'm all in on that. That's awesome. And I ended up working, so I lived in New Hampshire at the time, on the East Coast of the United States. I ended up working in New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Virginia, Delaware. I was all over the place. And we get to the end of the year, and I had been on the road for 10 months out of the 12 months. Every single week, I was living in hotels. I was driving 6 hours to the job site. That was just my life. But we get to the end of the year, Andrew. I'm standing at my kitchen table. My girlfriend took the chairs. They were her chairs. She took them with her. So I'm just standing there, and I was never home, so I didn't buy new chairs. Right. And I slid open my final pay stub, and I made $100,000 at 26 with no college degree. But I had another one of those, you did it again. You did it again. You thought this was going to fix all your problems, and it didn't fix any of the problems. And shortly after that, I ended up being interviewed on a podcast. Okay. And at the end of that interview, I said to my friend, imagine if you could do that for a living. And my buddy said, you know, you can, right? And everything was like, whoa, wait, what do you mean? What do you mean you can? So shortly thereafter, I realized that for most of my life, I had been living unconsciously. The opposite of unconscious is hyperconscious. Yep. I started a podcast called the Hyperconscious Podcast. That was my baby. And when I started that thing, it was like overnight, I stopped caring about my job. I stopped caring about the money. I didn't want to travel. I didn't want to work the hours I was working. So it began taking me off of the course that I was on. So I started calling out of work.
Yep.
I would leave the job site early, much to the dismay of the people who are working with me, because when you're making $100 an hour, if you leave 4 hours early, you lose $400, and that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
It got to the point, Andrew, where I would have to be 6 hours away on a job site at 7 a.m. and I would sleep in my bed from 9 p.m. until, either midnight, 12:30, 1, and I would just get up and drive straight to the job site. Then I would work an 8-hour day, and then I'd go to the gym after. Friday was the opposite. I did the same thing. And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And I just knew it wasn't for me. But the thing is, I didn't listen to the whisper. There was always that whisper of, Kev, you should be doing something else. Kev, you should be doing something else. Kev, you should be doing something else. Unfortunately, if you don't hear the whisper, there's a scream that follows pretty shortly after, depending on what you're doing. And I was in New Jersey. I was in this crusty hotel room. It was 5:15. My alarm goes off. I wake up, slide to the edge of the bed, lacing up my dirty work boots. I've done it hundreds of times at this point. And the best way to explain it, Andrew, is there's 10 televisions on in my head, and every single one's on a different station. And one's saying you're stuck here forever. You'll never make $100 an hour somewhere else. You got lucky getting this job. You cannot leave. What will your friends think? What will your family think? And the loudest one was, do you really think you can be a successful podcaster? And the truth, the vulnerable truth is no, I did not. I did not believe that was possible for me. And in that moment, I genuinely felt like if I ended my life, I would take my problems with me. And that is my rock bottom, basement, helpless, hopeless moment. Now, luckily, I had a really good support system around me. I'm very blessed. I messaged my business partner, who wasn't my business partner at the time. He was just a good friend. And I said, hey, I'm going through it. I'm having these thoughts. I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. I don't know what's going on. He said, Kev, so much has changed for you over the last few years, but your environment hasn't changed yet. I think it's time for a change. And I left my job 3 or 4 months later, went full time into what we're doing today. Now, that's where most people's stories end. I was broke for the next 3 years. My car broke down. I couldn't get it fixed. Stalling at red lights. The brakes didn't work. So that part was rock bottom, and it was very challenging. I'm so glad I made it through that. The next 3 years were just as difficult in different ways. And I want to make sure I'm honest about that, because I didn't just quit my job and end up at 900 episodes. It's been so many mirrors, so much knowledge, so many learnings, so many unlearnings. So I think it's important to give that context as well.
Yeah. Well, so one of the things that you talk about right there at the end, the unlearning is so crucial, and something that so many people forget. Yeah. That, okay, well, I'm learning stuff. You go, yeah, but there's a whole decades perhaps of stuff that you've got to unlearn before you're going to actually be able to make use of what you've learned.
Yeah.
And to be in that situation, I think something that's occurred to me lately, and I want to pass this by you, is people don't actually want to do the things that it takes to get what they say that they want, because they don't understand what they have this kind of dissonance. They don't understand that they don't really want it, or they do want it, but they've got all these limiting beliefs in place in front of them. Have you encountered that a lot? I mean, is that something that you've seen with the people that you're working with?
Yeah. I mean, not only with the people I've been working with, but with myself. I mean, one of the reasons and one of the things that really helped me understand the difference between learning and unlearning was I got to the point where I had been learning every single day. I learn 45 minutes a day, every single day. It's something I check off on my system. But for some reason, it didn't seem like it was going down to the root of who I was as a human being. Nothing was really changing. And I had this moment where I thought to myself, okay, for the first 25 years of my life, I learned everything that I learned, but none of it was really by design. So I really thought about it. When I was born, and think about it if you're out there watching, listening, when you're born, you are a seed. you are born into an environment that you have no control over. And the soil that is put around you and put on top of you and put under you is of no control of your own doing. It might be toxic soil. You live in that toxic soil, you grow in that toxic soil, and you begin to become a plant. Now, here you are 2, 5, 10, 15, 20 years later, and you're taking this nutritious soil, listening to every podcast, reading every book, watching every TED Talk, and you're pouring it on top of what is potentially negative soil. All of the nutrients are not getting down to the seed. So I believe this is why the inner work is just as important as the outer work. For me, Andrew, that showed up in so many ways. I mean, I was conditioned not to like sales. Right. Well, if you're an entrepreneur who wants to grow and scale a global business, if you don't at least try to learn sales, you're going to be in for a rough ride. I had to uncondition the beliefs I had and then recondition based on new, aligned beliefs or practices, whatever it may be. I think that a lot of people have that. I think a lot of people are living with beliefs based from their past that usually aren't their own. There's somebody else's who downloaded the beliefs, and then that's how you live your life. Then somebody comes into your life and says, hold on a second. Is that actually true, or is that just what you believe? And then you question it and you say, oh, you know what? I actually got that from my mom, from my dad, from my teacher. That's because that was what their beliefs are, and I can shift that. So everything that I talk about really, Andrew, is based on the fact that I had to learn it first. I have had to learn everything and unlearn everything about myself before I can teach that to somebody else. I really try only to talk about the things that I have experience in, because there's a lot of things that I don't. There's a lot of things I haven't experienced yet that I can't talk effectively, congruently about. But yeah, I've been the test dummy for many of my own thoughts and beliefs before I start talking about them with anybody else.
Well, see, of course, that's the most crucial thing of all, is to come at something from the point of view of the experimenter, not the expert. That I think so much, whether you want to call it self-help, personal empowerment, personal growth, research, content out there, people claim to be the experts in these things, and they go, but they haven't. They've done 2 steps of, well, I thought this up and I thought this sounds like a good idea. I'm going to tell everybody and come at it like I've done it. And you go, if you haven't experienced some of these things, you can't go beyond surface level. You can't do anything besides say, hey, here's an idea I had. Well, what do I do if this happens? We go, I don't know. No clue, man. I don't have anything. There's something in one of your podcasts. We're talking about consistency, commitment, habits, things like that. And those kind of all go together, right? That to be consistent, to commit, and they're kind of the secret sauce, I suppose, to actually making change stick. Can you talk about how you've, the value that you found in those kinds of things throughout your journey?
100%. This is the very interesting thing, Andrew. The fundamentals are not sexy. And I think that's why people get away from talking about the fundamentals, because it's not the sexiest thing. It's not the flashiest thing. We always talk about fitness, and we liken it to fitness. There's some pretty basic things that will get you in shape. I mean, if you there's 5 to 7 really basic fundamental exercises you can do to get results, but they don't look good on social media. They don't look that good. They don't attract eyes, right? So it all depends on what you're trying to do. But so we talk about the 5 C's. We talk about clarity. You need clarity. No matter where you are in life, if you're not clear on where you've been, where you are, and where you want to go, it's going to be very hard for you to make progress. We talk about confidence. If you do not believe it is possible, it almost isn't possible. Yeah. And that's something I've really, really struggled with and really had to work through over the last 5 years, but really the last 32 years. So you have clarity, you have confidence, you need commitment. How committed are you actually? And I always compare that to a relationship. The biggest difference between a relationship and a committed relationship is the amount of effort you're willing to put in. I take very, very high amounts of pride in my relationship, but I'm so committed. We say we do gratitudes every night before we go to bed. I try to improve as a man every single day. I don't want I don't want to have an ego flare. I want to apologize for the mistakes I make. I always want to take ownership. But that's part of being in a committed relationship, right? Consistency. Without consistency, almost nothing is possible. With consistency, almost anything is. That is our number one through line of, you got to understand, I can't do it for you. Right. So that's why the clarity is so important. The confidence, right? The commitment. Those are all so important, because when I'm not watching you, Andrew, I don't know what you're doing.
Right.
I don't know what you're doing. And if you're not doing the right things, you're not going to have the level of success that you want.
Right.
And the last one, and this is one of the biggest ones for me, community. Are the people in your life the best from your past or the best for your future? So many of our relationships are based on nostalgia in the who we used to be's, not the who we are becomings. Right. And so many of us are doing ourselves a disservice by saying, you know what? The reason we're friends is because we've always been friends, or the reason we're friends is because we went to college, high school, preschool, we worked together, whatever it may be. We played baseball, football, whatever. We played sports together. That's why we're still friends. But are they helping you become the type of person and have the level of impact and success and fulfillment and love that you want to have in the future? And if the answer is no, very, very tough. I know it's a very tough thing to do, but you have to have that conversation with yourself about, am I doing myself and this person a disservice by keeping them in my life to the capacity that they've always been? So I believe if you take those 5 things and you focus a little bit every day on those, your life will look drastically different, because you're putting in different inputs. Of course, you're going to get a different output eventually. It's not going to happen overnight. That I guarantee. I wish it did.
Well, don't we all, right? Yes. I mean, that's many times. I think like you say, the clarity step is the one that so many people skip, and really being clear on what they want, what they're going for, what's important to them, value systems, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And even when they are, and that's a small subset of people who actually get clear on what they want. Yeah. But even when they are, if you don't commit, then if you unevenly apply anything, if just think of painting a room, right? If you painted, okay, I'm really, I put a nice layer on this wall, and then the next one I just slapdash it on. Well, the room's still going to look like crap, because you got one wall next to another that looks like garbage. If we don't get into, in a sense, making it a habit that I am dedicated to these fundamentals, to being consistent, to being clear, to committing to these things. Yeah. And that's like that again, that's may not be sexy, but that's the secret to actually making change stick.
It's hard to, I don't want to say sell that, because it's not our goal to sell that, but it's like, I'll show you everything I do in a day, because that's really what works eventually. Right. Eventually, I think this is the problem, Andrew. And I think this is something that I've really been trying to figure this part out. So many people find success and they try to teach other people how they found that level of success. Sometimes it's luck. Sometimes it's by no fault or choice of their own. You have to really ask people, hey, how did you get these results though? Yeah. I see the results you have. How did you get these results? And this is the example I use. And this was a challenge for me to say the first time I said it, because I was thinking to myself, everybody's going to think I have a huge ego when I say this, but let me unpack the layers. There is a good chance that I know more about podcasting than Joe Rogan. Why? Because Joe Rogan didn't have to grow and scale and monetize his own show. He was already Joe Rogan. Yeah. He paid somebody to do all that, which is great. Now, Joe Rogan is a better interviewer than I am for sure, because he's done it. He's got more reps. He's world class. Yeah. World class. But if you went to Joe Rogan and said, hey, how do you grow, scale, and monetize a podcast? He doesn't have the reps of doing that. Right. And I think that's the important part, is not everybody talks about consistency or shows it. Not everybody talks about commitment or shows it. And oftentimes the people who do, unfortunately, tend to rub people the wrong way because I think they do it with an ego of, you got to grind your face off. Don't sleep.
Yeah.
Sleep is not important. I disagree. Sleep is unreasonably important from a physiological standpoint. Might be the most important thing, right? So you got to be very careful with why you're listening to who you're listening to. Yeah. And I do think that not a lot of people want to talk about the fundamentals because they're just not headlines. It's boring. It's kale. It's not candy. But you know, that's what gets you the results that you want. It really is. It really is playing the long game. I don't have any hacks. I don't. Right. But I do know what works over the long run.
Right. Well, I talked to somebody not that long ago who was a therapist, and she said, look, people want McDonald's therapy. They want to drive through and like get the fix, be told what to do, which is totally not the point of therapy for at all. Like you're supposed to come to it yourself, right? You're not supposed to be told what to do. But they want to, okay, and leave. And that's it. I went, I'm done. People underestimate how long it takes to get something, right? That was the other part of recent guests that I had on the show said, people say they would love to be, it's a concert pianist. They'd love to play the piano the way that you do. And you go, no, you wouldn't. Because if you did, you would. Anybody can learn to play the piano technically well. But there are no shortcuts. There may be if you get lucky, right? Like you say. You might luck into that one thing. You might pick up Bitcoin and be smart enough to have grabbed it and held on to it and not sold when it hit $1 bajillion, whatever. But man, some of those things, simple to talk about and really difficult to apply. Yeah. Even the confidence, right? I mean, hey, man, look, making a podcast, writing a resume, it's hard to talk about yourself. It's hard for me to talk about myself. Mm. I mean, I can't write a resume for anything because I go, there are probably people who are better qualified for this. Should I be doing this? Am I trying to, that's why I could never get a job. I mean, I was always impossible, right?
Yeah, but I think Andrew, confidence isn't what people think it is. I think people think confidence means you can go out and do anything, anytime with zero fear of judgment. I don't think that's what it is at all. I think confidence is finding the places that you feel fearful and pushing the boundary on them a little bit. Becoming more confident means you become more capable of taking uncertainty and understanding that even if things go wrong, you're going to be okay.
Yes.
I think, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think
it's trusting a certain baseline degree of ability. Yeah. Like I'll be able to figure this out. But that degree of stuff can be hard for people to come to. Sure. To feel like they've got that resilience, that little extra bit of, I got this. I'll figure it out.
I think you got to borrow it in the beginning. That's one of the things that I did. I borrowed other people's belief. So we have a young woman on our team named Amy. Amy reached out to me one day on Snapchat and said, "Hey, Kev, I am not very confident." There's the word, confident. "I'm afraid to start conversations with strangers." And I said, "Congrats. You're 99% of the world. I think most people are afraid. That doesn't mean you're not confident. It just means you're not confident there." And I said, "This is what we'll do, Amy. I'm going to meet you at the mall." Amy lived close to me. "And you and I are going to go to the mall and we're going to have conversations with strangers." Now, I didn't want to do it either. That's the thing. Right. I didn't want to do it, but I felt pulled to do it because I'm a podcaster and I'm positive and all that happy jazz. So that's what I decided would help Amy. So Amy and I go to the mall. We go into a store. And I said, "Amy, I want you to go ask them about that beanbag chair." I said, "It's their job to talk to you. They're not going to not talk to you. It's going to be fine." Amy talks to them. We go into another store. Ask them about that lamp. She asked them about the lamp. Awesome. We go do another store. We go down to the food court. We're having conversations all day. Amy's already more confident than she was going into that experience. We're getting ready to leave that day. And for some reason, in this mall, there's these mechanical zoo animals. There's a pen of them. You can rent them for like $10 for 5 minutes, whatever it is. And I said, "Amy, jokingly, if we were really confident, we'd rent those and we'd drive them around." And she said, "Okay, let's do it." And I was like, "Oh no, that's backfired. I didn't want it to go that way." But I have a video that I show at some of my speeches where I show Amy and I driving around on these zoo animals at the mall. The only difference, the only thing that changed that day was Amy proved to herself that the things that I am afraid of are not going to kill me. Yeah. They're actually way less scary than I thought. And that becomes your new baseline. Now Amy's on the team. She went back to school. She's been on podcasts. She's interviewed people. she's living a completely different life because we removed the imaginary boundaries that she thought was holding her back. And that goes back to the unlearning. I believe one of the keys to confidence is unlearning the things that you believe you can't do. So many of our fears are made up. And when you start knocking them down like dominoes, there is a domino effect. You realize, oh, you know what? I'm way more capable. I'm way more competent than I believed. When the first time I drove a car, Andrew, I was the least confident person in the world. But now I can drive a car very easily. I'm just more competent now, more capable. And that helps the confidence level as well.
Well, and there's, again, part of it is the reps, right? You get comfortable and start to know what to expect. You get in the car for the first time as a teenager, you don't know how you lack the ability to judge distance. You can't quite tell how close you are to the cars. And somebody in the passenger seat who's never been over there with somebody else driving is kind of, looking to the side and all that. But you do it again and you do it again. And you just gain that kind of, just that little bit of self-knowledge of how control works and all those kinds of things. And you got to build up to it. But like you say, you've got to push your comfort zone just a little bit.
Yeah, I think that you see a lot of memes and it says nothing grows inside the comfort zone. And I love that. I think that's a great, positive, inspirational thing. But my question after I see stuff like that is, well, what's the next layer of that though? Like, what do I do with that? So I think of it as a bullseye. In the middle of the bullseye is your comfort zone. The next layer out is your learning zone. And the furthest layer out is your anxiety zone. Now, there's also kind of another zone in the middle called, what I call it, the distracted zone. And I can explain why that is. That's something that I think now more than ever is important. But many of us live inside of our comfort zones. And our comfort zones are where things are easy. I can sit on the couch all day and not get any feedback. Zero feedback from watching whatever I'm watching. Very simple. It's easy. Now, the learning zone is where I'm tested. I'm in the learning zone right now. I'm closer to comfort than I am anxiety because I've done this so many times and now it's become somewhat natural, but I'm in my learning zone of I have to think of what I'm saying. I'm not super in flow right now. I'm not like very in flow. I'm still thinking about what I'm saying. It's a challenge, but it's a good challenge. It's an appropriate challenge. Then the anxiety zone is when you are out of control. When you are out of control and you're trying to figure all things out at once and you're beyond your current capabilities to a fault, beyond your current capabilities to a painful degree. I think of the distracted zone as it's almost like it's inside of your comfort zone where you take out your phone and the next thing you know, it's 4 hours later. And then you jump from distracted, quote unquote, comfort right into anxiety because you say, oh my God, I can't believe I just wasted 4 hours of my day. I'm so behind. So that's why I say distracted zone. But think of it this way. What is your 0 to 3? I was on a call recently with a young lady and she said, Kev, I want to be a speaker. And I said, awesome. That's great. I'd love to help you. Let's talk about how to do it. I said, on a scale of 1 to 10, how afraid are you of taking a video of yourself and posting it on Facebook? And she said 12. I said, okay. Anxiety zone, too much. Too much. I said, on a scale of 1 to 10, how afraid are you of taking a video of yourself and just leaving it on your camera? She said, that's probably like a 2 or 3. Comfort zone, okay? On a scale of 1 to 10, how afraid are you to take a video and send it to me? She said, it's probably like a 5 or a 6. Sweet spot. Awesome. Do that. She sent it to me. We talked about it after. She said, it actually went way better than I expected. It wasn't that bad. I know. I knew it wouldn't be that bad because it's not that far out of your comfort zone. And if you go through your life thinking, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how afraid am I to do this? Then have an honest conversation. And maybe you're overshooting, maybe you're undershooting. That's the biggest thing for me shifted, Andrew, when I started getting on planes. Because for me, planes are anxiety zones. But after you do it 5 or 6 times in the course of a year, it becomes learning zone. And it's outside, like it's high learning zone, but it's way less anxiety than it used to be. And I just think it really is when your learning zone expands, it pulls your comfort zone. Your comfort zone gets way bigger and it shrinks your anxiety zone. It pushes it out and it takes more and more for you to get anxious. And I just think that you got to find the line for you. You got to find the personal lines between those different zones. And if you can live in learning and visit comfort and visit anxiety, I think that's a good place to be. But a lot of us live in comfort and we visit learning, we visit anxiety, or we live in anxiety and we visit learning, we visit comfort, it's a fine line. That's why I don't believe that you should grind your face off, but I also don't believe that you should never work, because that's not the learning zone.
Right. Well, that's a really powerful metaphor. I really like that, because the fact that, and in fact, we could be in multiple zones at the same time. Like I am in my comfort zone with what's going on over here, and I am totally in my anxiety zone over here while I'm driving. And heaven forbid somebody come up to you while you're in the anxiety zone and the learning zone and the distracted zone simultaneously with what's going on in your. I mean, that would be a recipe for finding somebody who has trouble controlling their emotions, because they are, that's anger management territory.
Your state's off. You're unresourceful. You're an unresourceful human being when you're based on those overwhelms. You're just uncertain. Unresourceful.
Yeah. Yes. And that's, managing and marshaling your resources is so key to, for me, to getting stuff done effectively, being in that state where you're resourceful.
It's so important.
On a recent episode of your podcast, you talk about whether success requires sacrifice. Mm-hmm. And I think that's an episode that everybody should listen to. How do you guys talk about balance when it comes to those things? Yes, it requires sacrifice, but where do you draw the line?
I think the line is very, very, very personal, to the point where I've said this to other people before. I've said this to podcasting clients. With all the love in the world, you can't win at the level that we're going to win at, because you're not, and you probably shouldn't be willing to sacrifice as much as we are. That's just the truth of it. Is maybe you're not supposed to win at the level that we're supposed to win at, because you're not willing to go through what we're willing to go through, because that's not your purpose. Yep. I think that's an important thing too. But we always break it down to health, wealth, life, and love. I told you my story. I made six figures, but I burned my relationships to the ground, and I was very unhealthy doing it. Same for Alan. Alan made $180,000 in his mid-20s, and we have a very similar story. For us, it's about being holistic. It's about being holistic. If you really, really, really were to think about it, and you worked 80% of your waking hours, so say you slept for 8, so there's 24 hours in a day. Say you slept for 8, you get 16 hours of potential productivity.
Right.
If you were to work 80% of that time and then take 20% of that time for R&R, you'd have 3.5 hours a day, 3.2 hours a day of rest and recovery. Yeah. That is sustainable. Yeah. I think it's about creating something sustainable. The best diet in the world for you is the one that is most sustainable, that brings you progress, because you can't just do what I do, because maybe it doesn't work for you the way it does. Maybe you don't like eating a salad, oatmeal, and whatever I decide to eat for dinner. Maybe that's just not the flow for you. Right. I think that it goes back to the clarity, and it goes back to the self-awareness of what is the learning zone for you. If you try to do 7 episodes a week as a podcaster from the start, you wouldn't last. It's taken us 5 years to get to that point.
I don't know how you guys do it, by the way. I mean,
it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. But it's based on an outcome that we're shooting for in the future. That's the sacrifice that we're willing to make to have the level of impact that we believe we want to have. And I think that's the point of it all. I think it's this. More often than not, I think people either drastically overshoot or undershoot in terms of their self-awareness. There's a lot of people out there that I know and I've worked with who think it's all going to work out, and I can see myself speaking on stage one day, and it's going to happen no matter what. That's not true. There are some other people out there that think, well, I just have to work my face off forever, and I don't have to worry about rest and recovery, and it's going to be fine. That's not true either. You're going to burn out. Something even worse is going to happen. What is the middle of that? What is the middle of that? It all depends on the outcome you want to have. If you want to be able to walk your children to the bus stop, that's not a sacrifice you're willing to make. Cool. Right. Then we figure out what that means for you and how do we fit that in somewhere else. I think it's very personal. And I think that's the danger of listening to me. Don't listen to what I say. Figure out, okay, well, Kev said this. I resonate with that, but I don't resonate with this. How come? You can't just take a blanket statement and then run with it, because your life is completely different.
Yeah.
And I just think that you got to check in with yourself. Success is awesome. Happiness is awesome. Fulfillment is something completely different, where when you love what you're doing, it's easier to show up 7 times a week, right? I love podcasting. It's easier. Now, if I had to go change 7 oil changes a week, it would be harder for me because I don't enjoy doing oil changes. I'm not a mechanic. I don't value that.
Right.
So I think it's very personal. It all depends on self-awareness, and everybody has a different capacity for work. Everybody has a different capacity for total productive output. You got to figure out what yours is, and then how much are you willing to stretch it? How much are you trying to live in the learning zone? I think that's the through line of this conversation is how much in the learning zone do you want to be? That is the through line.
That's awesome. Okay, one rapid fire question.
Please.
What is the biggest fallacy in your industry that you feel like everybody else buys into that's just total BS?
Everybody can win. I just don't. I would be doing you a disservice if I said you can win, because it's based on so many factors that I don't know whether or not you're willing to learn, unlearn, hire the mentors, hire the coaches. I think that's it. There's a lot of toxic positivity. There just is. And that's understandable because there's also a lot of negativity. So I think it tries to balance, but I think that's one of the biggest fallacies is everybody deserves to win. That's what I would say.
If you want to know more about Kevin, you can find him on Instagram at NeverQuitKid, on the internet at nextleveluniverse.com, and of course, through the Next Level University podcasts, links in the description. Until next time, I'm Andrew Wallace, and we don't have a problem. We've got an opportunity.